Hey guys, so today I'm going to be making a tier list of my personal opinion, of course. So you're entitled to your own. But just tier listing the weapons in Ark Survival Evolved based on their PvP usefulness, and I'm going to be looking at how easy they are to craft, just their overall usefulness in a combat situation, damage, and maybe reusability as one of them, but that kind of comes under usefulness, I would say. So let's just start with the assault rifle. Now, I'd say this is probably easy A tier weapon. I mean, it's not the best, but it gets the job done. Um, yeah, that's what I can say about it. I mean, it's hard to miss with an assault rifle because you can just hold the button down, no matter if you're on PC or console. It's just an all-around good weapon to have on you. Shreds through flak armor very, very quickly, and is pretty reliable at range too. I mean, yeah, so pretty well-rounded weapon. Now bolas, I'm gonna say A tier as well. Very good for disabling your opponent, and a lot of PvP relies heavily around them. But because of their, like just how hard they are to aim. If you've ever used one, you know this. They kind of suck the throw unless you're going at a stationary target or if you just get really, really lucky. Now, another weakness to them is I don't believe you can bola shielded opponents and you cannot bola people that are underwater. So those are some things to consider. And I'd say it still deserves the A tier because of its 30-second, um, how it downs people for 30 seconds. That's pretty good. And it's very craftable, very easy to craft. For that, I'm gonna actually put the assault rifle down into B tier, just because it's harder to craft, especially early game, and yeah, just not a very easily craftable weapon compared to some of the other ones on this list. Now, boomerang, easy S tier. If your opponent does not have any fortitude, you can sometimes one-shot knock them out if you melee them with the boomerang. The ranged option is decent as well, but it's harder to, land headshots, which are the only ones that are actually going to give you a significant amount of torpor. So melee boomerang, easy S tier. Ranged boomerang, I'd probably put it at a B. But just overall S tier weapon, very easy to craft. The only problem is you can't craft it on the island and stuff, but the island isn't really like a main map for PvP. Um, but actually, there are some pretty good island servers, and I have to admit, especially on LDL, it's pretty fun to play because you're not constantly getting gunned down by wyverns. So it's not going to be an option on the island. Now, I'm just going to keep going in order here. Bow is another B tier weapon. Pretty reliable damage, and very easy to craft. The ammo is very easy to craft, and just pretty reliable, pretty high damage. Even on an armored opponent, it does some decent damage. I mean, as long as they're not like wearing flak or something, but pretty decent early game weapon. Harder to land shots on, but not impossible like the bola. But yeah, I'd just say if it had better durability, I'd put it up into A tier, but its durability is not very good. Now C4, I'm kind of like debating. I'm gonna do A tier based on my standards because it's really hard to craft, but it's an absolute essential in PvP. If you want to get into a metal base, do not use grenades. You will literally waste half of your life trying to get into that base if you're just using grenades. C4 is the absolute way to go if you're raiding any higher tier bases, but grenades work perfectly fine if you just want to get into a stone base or a wooden base without sitting there hacking away for hours. Um, Pretty good overall. Its range is obviously very limited, but you can stick it on a dino that you can pick up and throw, and now it becomes very ranged when you use it like that, which is a very interesting tactic. Um, Flashlight, I don't know its usefulness against players, so I'm going to put it D tier, which is the bottom on this list. I would put it lower than that, but yeah. Um, Cluster grenade, I really don't have much experience with it, but I'd say it's probably pretty good, but probably very expensive as well, so that's why I'm going to put it in C. compound bow. Now this one I don't use a lot personally, but I know people will be super mad at me if I put it any lower than S tier. Very high damage weapon. Pretty hard to craft, but it's just very reliable in PvP if you're fighting anyone. Just a good option to stay ranged. And also deals some pretty good damage. So good option overall. Crossbow, I'm gonna have to also put S tier because it's a lot easier to craft than the compound bow. Still really, really good damage on primitive even. I think 95 to the body, which is just almost one shot if someone has not upgraded their HP at all. Headshot, definitely one shot. But just really, really decent weapon. Can be fired underwater, which is another huge perk. Yeah, so I think it's definitely deserving of that spot. And yeah, you'll see every player that is not alpha is probably carrying one of these on them. Any player that's not super advanced, I basically mean by that. Just a very good early game ranged option. I have no clue what this is. Shock prod, I'm gonna say B. I'll give it a B because it's nice and all, but if someone's upgraded their fortitude, it's not super reliable. Pretty good though, because it usually one-shot knocks people out. But like I said, if their fortitude is upgraded, that's a problem. And also, if you don't have the angler gel to be repairing this thing, it's going to be problematic. So yeah. Pistol is kind of mid. I'm going to put it C. It's not the most expensive weapon to craft, but also its damage is not kind of subpar, I would say. So I'm going to put it in C. Yeah, it's basically just like a weaker version of the assault rifle. Is really what it is, just a smaller clip, less damage. Not really worth having. I mean, the ammo's maybe less expensive too, but still. And then sniper rifle, easy S. Everybody that wants to be anybody on a PvP server is going to be carrying these. You can snipe people off the top of their wyverns, no problem at all. Just make sure you stay distance, obviously. But that's kind of where its strength lies, is with distance. Up close, it's still kind of reliable because it has that 8 clip. So you can kind of spam people with it. But yeah, durability is kind of a problem with it because you fire maybe 100 shots before it breaks, if that. It probably breaks a lot faster than that on the primitive version. Flamethrower, another S tier. Like the torch, which I'll be going over later. Well, okay. Actually, I'm going to say A. Because it's good. Because it's like a ranged torch. But for how expensive it is, the torch is nearly as effective. Really. I mean, when you think about it. So, I'm going to give it an A tier because it's a good weapon. But it's kind of expensive. And if you have a torch, it's really not necessary. Flashbang plant, this basically blinds you for those of you who don't know. I don't think anyone really uses it, except if you're Naked Zombo or someone, so I'm gonna drop that to D. This is a tech grenade, I think, of some kind, but I don't usually see those getting a lot of uses, so I'll put that down there. This also, not a lot of uses, so I'm gonna put that down there. Yeah, I think both of those, I don't know what they are. The grenade, I will put this in B because it's pretty affordable and pretty reliable, but ultimately when raiding you're gonna want something better eventually. So that's why I put it at B. And in terms of like attack, you really can't use explosives in Arc for attacking unless it's a rocket launcher, which even then you don't really want to because you might blow yourself up. Harpoon gun, in terms of usefulness on PvP, is 0. It has like no usefulness on PvP. Mines, I've never seen these be used, and I play official, so kind of used to the nitty gritty of craziness like that, but just a casual player, not crazy like some of these people. Long neck is it's a pretty good weapon. I would put it at A. The problem with long neck is that it's obviously one shot. So if you miss, you're kind of done for, especially if you're like in a dire situation where you need to land that shot. Tech pistol, again, one I really don't see too much. I mean, it does have its uses, but in PvP, pretty limited. Pike, I'm gonna have to say A, because it can keep you back, especially if you're a melee person. It's good for someone that isn't a melee person. They can carry it to keep the melee people distanced from them, because it's one of the few weapons alongside the spear, but it's obviously like a way better version of the spear, and it's relatively easy to craft. Yeah, pretty good option to keep like torchers or clubbers at bay if you don't want to get knocked out or burnt to a crisp. I'll just keep going in order. It's tempting to go to that spear. Narcotic grenade, I will give this a C, just because very good for clearing out a base that you see an opening in and there's people inside. You can chuck one of those in and you'll knock them out real easy. Problem is, I don't really see them used that much, but who knows? Who knows? They could actually be extremely reliable. The shotgun. Now, this is a weapon I do see people using sometimes, but mainly only in caves. I will give it A because really reliable damage, but yeah, it's just, especially playing on console, I've found it so funny because I've tried to take shotgun players on naked, like just fists, and I've lasted like a really long time against them because they can't land the hits. Like for a shotgun, its spread is like, it's not, which is a good thing if you want to use it range, but really if you're trying to like just try to spam fire people, this shotgun doesn't really work like that. So you actually have to kind of aim, and that's one of the major drawbacks that drops it from S. It's not a downright OP weapon like the sniper rifle. Tech railgun, I would put it lower than this. I just don't see a lot of people using it, but a really good weapon. Really expensive, but really good weapon right there. Rocket launcher, A, this is a good one if you want to raid like a base that has turrets, but you want to raid it from a distance where you're safe. Just shoot your rockets, and you'll blow that thing up from far away. One drawback is I don't see a ton of people using them, like especially to fight other players. So from a raiding perspective, they can be useful, but their durability is kind of bad, and just they're kind of expensive to deal with. Now the standard shotgun, I'm gonna give that a B. It's pretty good. It's not like something incredible, especially if you're going against someone with any really heavy armor. If you fire 2 shots off at them, which is all that clip has, is barely going to do anything to them. So just not super reliable against stronger enemies. But if you're just one-on-oneing someone who's equally skilled as you, you probably can beat them with it. That's why I would give it that. Now the pistol, I'm going to have to say probably S tier weapon right there. I mean, for 6 ammo, I mean, it also gets headshot bonuses too. 60 damage on body. I don't know, it just seems like a really good weapon, to the point where, I mean, it's really easily craftable too compared to the other firearms in the game. But like, I don't know, it's hard to say. I feel like it should deserve the S though, because like, they're so prominent that there's actually a problem with some of the Xbox servers where people cross-playing on Windows 10 have been like aimbotting with these things, is how good they are. So, I mean, yeah. I mean, and they're not aimbotting because it's hard to aim them or anything, it's just because they can't aim. But obviously a good weapon, if this is a weapon that people literally like, you know, main and hack with, yeah. Slingshot, slingshot. Sorry, slingshot. I do like you, but a D is where you're going to stay, I think. Because if you're taking on anyone with armor, it's not reliable anymore. Smoke grenade, this one's not very useful either. Because if they have like a parasaur or a snow owl, your chances of escaping have just disappeared. Spear, I will give a C tier. It's not horrible. I mean, if you have good melee, they're good. They're very cheap. Yeah, and like this, the pike, you can just keep people at a distance. This one guy was giving me a really hard time, and all he had was spears. So, I mean, hey, if you can make it work, it's a good weapon, I guess. Swords. Swords are good if you have good melee. So that's why I'm going to put them at B. Because if you want to just be that player that runs in and hacks and slashes everyone, go for it. Swords are for you. If you're kind of more like balanced stats or a ranged player, a sword is not a good option. Because unlike the pike, you have to get very close to actually do anything. And you will just get absolutely destroyed if you don't have good armor, good health, and good damage. So it's definitely deserving of the B, I think. Tech bow. I feel like a lot of these weapons just don't get used because people don't want to lose them in fighting. So I don't know. I'm not gonna give it a D. It's not that bad. I'll put it with the tech railgun because like realistically, the compound bow for the price, in my opinion, is better than the I know how to use words than the tech bow. The tech bow does have all those like fancy modes and stuff, but again, I just don't really see it getting used that often. And yeah, just pretty expensive. These tech claws, I never ever see them getting used. Tech sword, I'll put them above normal sword. Tech sword is really, really good. You can hack your way into stone bases with these in a couple of seconds. They're just absolutely crazy how much damage they deal. This, I'm not sure what it is. Tech rifle, I'm going to do B tier just because of its expensiveness, obviously, but really good weapon otherwise. Works underwater. Actually, I'll give it a S. Because it works underwater. It has some range on it. It's a projectile, kind of like a Halo plasma rifle. Probably where the inspiration came from. But like, yeah, it has like a scope and everything. It's just a really reliable weapon and really high damage weapon too. Only drawback is you obviously have to have element to use it. So now whip, I'm gonna give A. In terms of combat abilities, there's no combat abilities with it, but if you have someone that's coming at you with like a sword or something, or just they're a melee player and they're coming after you, or there's just a ranged player and annoying the heck out of you, go up and whip them and it'll drop their weapon and you can whip again, and if it's still in the baggie on the ground, it'll pick it up and you have it now. Very good. Not accessible if you don't have silk on your map, obviously, so that's a bit of a drawback. And if it did some damage, I would maybe rank it as S, but it does literally no damage at all whatsoever, so just not reliable for actually finishing enemies off. The club, I'm gonna have to say A. It's like the boomerang, but worse in a lot of ways. But the one thing that's nice about it is if you have decent melee damage and a fight has to go underwater, you can swim up to someone with this and beat the heck out of them, and you will probably knock them out. Probably. Like, it's reliable for what it's used for, and very cheap too. Damage wise, pretty bad. Durability wise, pretty bad. Knockout ability is only decent, I would say, but for what you're getting, for what you're paying, I think it deserves an A. And also, there was some weapons that weren't like included in this tier list, so I'm just gonna put my own pictures of them on the tier list. Now, the one y'all have been waiting for, Torch, is an easy S tier. This is my personal favorite weapon to troll people with. I will go naked and absolutely destroy flak kids with this before. I've done it many times, and it's just absolutely ridiculous how OP it is. I'm actually so OP that I am like fearful for the Torch meta in Arc 2. Like, I don't feel like it's gonna be a thing. But yeah, Torch is very easy to craft. Very low impact damage, but where it's at is its percentage damage that goes through armor, the burning effect. That can kill even players with good HP in a couple of hits if you're doing it right. And yeah, just very reliable. The one drawback I would say is its durability, and you have to get very, very close to someone for this to work. But very reliable at taking out enemies. Now, I'm also going to go over some other things as well. Metal Scythe, very fast swing speed, and I don't know what the damage is like, but I'm gonna give it a C. It's definitely not deserving of the D because it's pretty cheap to craft. Its damage is probably decent, I'd imagine. So, I mean, in the swing speed, dude, the swing speed is crazy on those things. If you had a good one, you could be like the Grim Reaper out there, probably. But, okay. Stone Hatchet and Pickaxe, both I'm gonna throw into D. Because, while they're easy to craft, their actual, like, fighting abilities are pretty limited. Metal Pick, I'll put C. Not a very good weapon. But I'd put the Metal Hatchet in probably B or maybe even A. I'm gonna say A because its damage is a lot higher than that of the Metal Pickaxe, and also it raises torpor too, like kind of an impressive amount. If you level your melee, I encountered this one guy that one shot knocked me out with a Metal Hatchet. So it's a halfway decent weapon. So definitely worth picking up and using in a battle. You can use them with shields, just like the torch or any other like one-handed weapon. You can use them with shields, which obviously is a nice combo. Actually, if you were using a sword with a shield, I would say that might be deserving of S tier, right there. Torch plus shield is even more insane, but yeah, just really good combos you can get with shields. Shields I'm not going to rank on here. Armor I'm not going to rank on here because armor rankings and shield rankings are pretty obvious. But if we're going by craftability, I would say your wooden shield is really not a horrible option to be your main shield. Unless you're soaking turrets with it, because then it'll get absolutely destroyed. But wooden shield is suffice for regular foot PvP. You don't need anything better than that. And it just gets heavier from there. So that'd be my advice as far as shields and armor. My favorite armor to wear around just everywhere in PvP is hide, just because it offers a pretty decent amount of protection and is really cheap. That's what I see a lot of people wearing. There's some people that walk around in flak, and the problem with that is sometimes people assume that you're hostile if you're wearing flak, which is not good if you're like on low HP and you're just trying to walk around, you know. But yeah, flak is a good armor because it's relatively cheap to make and really good protection. Ride is the only one better than that aside from tech, but Ride isn't really even worth it for how expensive it is. So I forgot to include some of the newer weapons they added to Ark. Well, the newer weapon they added to Ark, I guess, because it wasn't on this list. But the minigun, I'm going to throw it in A tier because it's definitely a step up from the assault rifle. Just higher fire rate, higher clip. Yeah, just a better version of it in pretty much every way imaginable. And then, of course, we couldn't forget the absolute most OP weapon in Ark Survival Evolved, ladies and gentlemen. You thought it was the torch. I fooled you. It's actually fists are the #1 most OP weapon in Ark Survival Evolved. I mean, your dude can take down trees with that junk. He can take down other players. He can take down dinosaurs if he wanted to with his bare hands. So I'm going to have to rank that S tier immediately, and probably the best out of all of these because craftability, it's free, you spawn with them. Usefulness, very useful. Your fists are very useful, like you couldn't do anything without them. Damage is a little bit lacking on the damage department, but it can still knock people out pretty effectively. And then I would say in terms of just like durability, they're obviously invincible because you can't break your fist, at least not that I know of in Ark. So yeah, definitely the most broken weapon in Ark Survival. I'm just playing, but if it was a weapon, I would definitely give it an S tier. I hope you enjoyed this tier list, guys, and I will see you in the next video, in which hopefully I will be covering the basics of early game Ark PvP with actual gameplay and just more tips and stuff on how to
get out there and, just not get killed immediately by everyone. So yeah,